Well, Trump and Elon declared war over the weekend on one another, and Elon told the world that Trump is in the Epstein files. Kash Patel got wind of this bombshell just as he was in the middle of a Joe Rogan interview dedicated to convincing the public that Epstein did, in fact, kill himself. So, once again, it's going to be up to all of us conspiracy theorists to finish the job. And today, I'm going to walk Kash and all the rest of us through all of the loose ends in the Epstein case that he might want to follow up on if he wanted to find some answers. Plus, at the end, we've got a spicy theory that could explain all the conflicting stories coming from inside the administration. Welcome back to Candace. By now, I'm sure that you've heard all about Elon Musk declaring war on Donald Trump and all the drama that played out over the weekend, even though it was overshadowed almost overnight by riot season breaking out in LA, which we will talk about later in the week. But I couldn't help but laugh when I saw that Russia has now offered political asylum to Musk. And they were obviously joking, but like not joking, you know what I mean? So it was punctuated by Kash Patel, though, appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast for a 2-hour interview. And although the Rogan episode didn't air until the day after Musk's bombshell tweet, in a hilarious twist of fate, the tweet dropped right while they were recording, and Jamie pulled it up live in the studio. Kash's reaction was hilarious. Watch this.
Elon and Trump seem to be in a bit of a spat, Joe. You want to check the tweet that Elon just put out a little bit ago?
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation
What
between
is
Elon and
have a
Trump.
nice day, DJD. Someone should take his phone away.
They're going back and forth about different things. And
Yeah. Listen,
Well, he said he was disappointed in Elon.
yeah, they told him to leave.
Jesus Christ, that's a crazy thing to say. How does he know? Does he know that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Or does he have access to the Epstein files?
I don't know how he would, but I'm just staying out of the Trump-Elon thing. That's way outside my lane.
What the are they doing?
I know my lane, and that ain't it.
I know my lane, and that ain't it. True, Kash. I really wish that Jamie had edited the episode so that we had video of Kash's eyeballs as the tweet hit the screen, because I'm very curious, like, what he was covering up in his expression. That's, like, all around a pretty wild experience. I'm sure that Kash will remember that moment for the rest of his life. But ultimately, beneath all the drama, we learned a lot about what to expect on the Epstein story and what to expect from Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, which is not much. It's actually basically nothing. Watch more of what Kash said during the interview.
Again, we're going to give you everything we can, and people have to remember, we're not going to re-victimize women. We're not going to put that back out there. It's not happening, because then he wins. Not doing it. You want to hate me for it? Fine. Again, logical play out. If there was a video of some guy or gal committing felonies on an island and I'm in charge, don't you think you'd see it?
If you have access to it.
If I have it. Period.
Right.
If I have it. If I have it.
So.
Where else would it be?
Right. If you have it.
Right.
But you can't say that you have it.
No, we're giving you everything we have.
So far.
Everything we have so far is
Have
the
you guys gone over all the video that's available?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. That's what takes so much damn time.
So aside from how confusing that whole exchange is, there's apparently no videos, or everything we have so far is being... It's a little unclear, but Kash does make it clear that what we all want to be in the videos is not in the videos, which is all of these billionaires and powerful politicians on tape with the crimes that they've been committing that was being used for blackmail. And we know the FBI confiscated boxes and boxes of tapes originally. Plus, earlier this year, there was that one time that one of James O'Keefe's muckrakers caught Pam Bondi on hidden camera saying this.
Do you know when the Epstein files are going to get released?
We hope soon. The FBI's been...
Okay.
So,
any dates?
No, you know what it is? There are tons of thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids. So they have to go through every one.
So after that, she came out and made that statement, the same statement, in a mainstream interview to save face, presumably. So here's that.
The FBI, they're reviewing, there are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going through that.
So what's going on here? How do we square these two experienced public figures saying two such wildly different things? On the one hand, Kash could be compromised. Maybe his family is threatened or something to that effect. But then Bongino would have to be under the same pressure as well, and so many other people around them. So if what Bondi is saying were true, then FBI agents have all seen these videos, and the cover-up of this whole thing would have to be impossibly broad right now, today. So I find it hard to believe that would even work. Or Pam Bondi could be compromised and maybe intentionally putting out misinformation, either to purposely undermine trust in Kash by claiming that he has things that he does not have, or she could just be a dumbass politician making big facetious claims for the cameras. But the claims that she's making were only initially captured on hidden camera, and only once that hit the internet did she actually make those claims, like, to the public. So there's a whole wild rabbit hole that you can fall down about Pam Bondi's involvement in the Trayvon Martin case in Florida about a decade ago, which in many ways gave rise to the whole BLM movement. It's entirely possible that Pam is compromised, but I think it's more likely she just loves the spotlight and is most concerned with advancing her own career. Basically, though, all theories just boil down to one major question. Is Kash lying about what is available to him? Or is he accurately reporting what's available to him? Or is it the mysterious third option, which we'll get to at the end? In my opinion, though, it is far more likely that he is accurately reporting what he has, and he is being intentionally used for his track record of disclosure, of being a hound dog, of going after the truth and the deep state. And it looks to me like Kash and Dan might essentially just be getting played as unwitting patsies for the cover-up of the true story. Erase and destroy all the evidence that was collected, maybe even generate a couple carefully crafted videos and other files to leave around, drop them into an empty room with no leads, and what can these guys do? Again, that doesn't really square with Pam Bondi out here running her mouth about biblical amounts of evidence being processed by the FBI. But anyways, it looks like, once again, it's going to be on all of us conspiracy theorists to do their job for them. Because while everyone is losing their minds over Trump-Musk drama, there's a reason why we all care so much about Epstein. Epstein is not just a child predator that hurt underage girls. Epstein represents the most damaging national security leak in America's history. And that leak is still wide open. So someone please tell Kash Patel that if you do not have the blackmail tapes that Epstein was collecting on people like allegedly Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Marvin Minsky, Glenn Dubin, Leon Black, Sergey Brin, Bill Richardson, George Mitchell, many, many more, then that means that someone else still has those tapes. That means that someone else still has Lord knows how much of our current administration, permanent government, corporate executives, and celebrities all blackmailed. Right now, today. We know that those tapes existed. We know that the FBI raided his mansion and confiscated a large number of them. They aren't missing because the good guys misplaced them. They're missing because people inside one of the previous administrations covered it up. Now, why would someone do that? Well, you don't have to be all that sharp to realize that the only kind of person that would cover something like that up would be someone working for the blackmailers. Obviously. And so it stands to reason that they wouldn't have permanently destroyed them all from existence. They would have simply destroyed them from your records, from your files, and your storage lockers, Kash. The blackmailers obviously still have that blackmail. The two most powerful men in our country, or at least so we're told, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, are both candidates for that blackmail, depending on who you ask. Faith in our federal government and agencies is at an all-time low, and for good reason. It is entirely possible, even likely, that former presidents back to Bill Clinton were also on that blackmail list. This is not the kind of that you look in the file and say, huh, nothing there. I guess there's nothing to see. Case closed. Bro, you are the FBI. Your job is to investigate this. CNN's job is to get a memo and just report whatever it says to us. And yet somehow it seems that just about everything we know about Epstein and his network comes from the muckraker journalists and from victim testimony and whistleblowers. The only thing that the federal government has contributed to the investigation into the most significant criminal enterprise in generations is to help cover it up. Like that one time when Alex Acosta gave him a sweetheart plea bargain and looked the other way because someone told him Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. Or when top justice officials in Florida repeatedly blocked Palm Beach Chief of Police Michael Ryder from bringing Epstein down sooner. Or when Bill Barr, whose father had hired Epstein without qualifications for his first teaching job at the Dalton School, Bill Barr oversaw the detention and suicide of Jeffrey Epstein. But Kash is apparently throwing his hands in the air and treating it like a closed case, like there's nothing he could do to shake the tree and expose more. What's in the files is apparently all there is. And to the whole FBI's embarrassment, Kash Patel, during his interview with Joe Rogan, was apparently not familiar with the extensive mainstream media reporting that not only was the footage of Epstein's first alleged suicide attempt apparently missing, and then it was later erased due to a clerical error, but also, if you notice the dates, 2 of the cameras outside of his cell the day that we are told he committed suicide were apparently not functioning. Kash also apparently didn't know about the second autopsy that seemed to show, at least according to that doctor, that there was no way it could have been a suicide because of the way that his neck was broken. Check this out.
Did you ever see, do you remember that HBO autopsy show? Dr. Michael Baden, he's a famous forensic
I don't think I've seen
scientist. So he's a pathologist, and he reviewed the case, and it was his determination that it was a homicide because of the way his neck was broken. And what he said was it was indicative of a ligature strangulation, and it was because of the positioning on the neck where the marks were, that it wasn't indicative of someone hanging by their weight, which had been higher on the chin. And there's a specific break of the bones and the vertebrae that's consistent with someone who is just strangled to death.
I haven't seen it. I'll definitely take a look at it because that's part of my job.
You haven't seen that?
The report on that? No, I haven't looked at that.
Did you see any? Was there any other autopsy done other than the official one?
Not to my knowledge, but if there was, you'll get it. And that's what we're doing.
Well, the rest of the world got it, Kash. You can read about it on Law and Crime or any number of other websites. And to be fair, Baden, this other doctor that gave this other diagnosis, he was hired by Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, to investigate. And then he's the one that found that he thought it was not a suicide, but instead a murder. But, you can look into it for yourself. The point is simply that Kash apparently is only concerned with what's in his files, but he's also at the same time less informed about the case than your average Twitter journalist about the state of play. So today, we're going to give Kash a little help because this is not JFK. Most of the alleged co-conspirators and perpetrators are still alive and walking free. Most of the victims are still alive and willing to talk. Most of the witnesses are still out there. Most of the crime scenes are still standing. So, let's start at the beginning and take a quick look at all of the myriad places that Kash could easily start looking for more answers if he really wanted to secure our nation. The first victims to go on record were Maria and Annie Farmer. Maria Farmer was recruited from the New York Academy of Art when Eileen Guggenheim introduced her to Jeffrey Epstein in the mid-90s. Her and her 16-year-old sister are 2 of the earliest known victims of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's alleged sexual assault. Eileen Guggenheim is still the chair of the board of directors at the New York Academy of Art, as listed on their website today. That is despite a petition launched in 2020 calling for her to step down and the resignations of many of the other female board members in protest. But don't worry, the school was sure to give $30,000 to a charity for victims of sexual assault, so it's all good. Guggenheim, coming from the family and background that she comes from, naturally goes on living an aristocratic life to this day. Farmer claims that she met Donald Trump one day in Epstein's office, recalling Trump eyeing her before Mr. Epstein informed him that she's, quote, not for you. And so right now, remember, Basically, everything we will read from today is just allegations, because no FBI director has ever done much more or even anything at all to verify or to try these things out. So the vast majority of these allegations have never been proven or even tried in a court of law. Okay? But she recalled a parade of young girls coming through Epstein's house and being told that they were modeling auditions for Victoria's Secret. We will come back to Leslie Wexner and his role in all of this in a bit. She also was one of the first to mention Bill Clinton, though she said that she never actually saw him. When she discovered that her 16-year-old sister had also been violated, she allegedly contacted the NYPD and the FBI, who simultaneously denied her contacting them, yet also followed up with her years later about said contact, though nothing ever seemed to come of it. She said she also raised her concerns with leaders in the art community, including Miss Guggenheim, but said Miss Guggenheim did not seem to take the issue seriously. I wonder why. When none of this worked, she went to a national magazine. Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly started calling and threatening her, saying things like, quote, "Better be careful and watch your back. I know you go to the West Side Highway all the time. While you're out there, just be really careful because there are a lot of ways to die there." One can only imagine the sorts of phone calls that the magazine got because the story was never published, and so Epstein's predation continued uninterrupted for more than a decade. Eventually, hundreds of victims spoke with police and reporters, and fortunately, some of them found a police officer that listened, one of the true heroes of the story. Joseph Carey was a decorated Palm Beach detective who opened an investigation to Epstein in 2005 and eventually brought charges against him in 2008. Although those charges did nothing to stop Epstein and hardly even slowed him down, they produced a large amount of evidence that widened the trail for journalists and law enforcement that would come after him. But he died in 2018 of a mysterious and sudden illness, just shortly after giving his deposition to the court about the case. Awfully weird timing. The only public reporting that I have ever been able to dig up on the matter is in the Palm Beach Daily News from June 1st, 2018, where it simply said that he died Friday, May 25th, 2018, after a brief illness. He was 50. No other information about the cause of death was ever released. Don't know what to make of that. Another hero in the first chapter of the investigation was Michael Ryder, the Palm Beach chief of police, who took his detective seriously when he heard the allegations, and he helped Carey investigate and bring the case against Epstein in 2008. He protested loudly at Epstein's sweetheart deal, calling it the worst failure of the criminal justice system in modern times. And while we're here, I also want to highlight some of the courageous victims that went public and are responsible for most of what we know and all of the small amount of justice being served to Ghislaine Maxwell for these crimes. Annie and Maria Farmer, Virginia Giuffre, and Joanna Schoberg, among many others, provided some of the most extensive and important testimony over the course of years of dangerous and grueling legal battles. Without these women's courage, Epstein would likely still be free and flying children to his private island to this day. Without them, we would likely have nearly no names of who else was involved in the abuse, the trafficking, and the cover-up. Earlier this year, Virginia paid the ultimate price for her fight when she died by apparent suicide. And I know a lot of people gravitate towards the belief that it was no accident. It's important to understand that we genuinely don't know for sure. Virginia lived an incredibly difficult life as a survivor. The things that she went through broke her. She was sick, she had lost custody of her children and was prevented from seeing them in the months before she passed. Her husband of 22 years had allegedly become abusive and had beaten her to the point of hospitalization before filing a family restraining order against her and taking her children from her. Please do not downplay the strength that this woman had to fight through all of that by ignoring how much pain and tragedy she had to endure. Maybe she committed suicide. Maybe she didn't. Either way, she was a hero for what she did to bring Epstein down, and she deserves to be remembered for that fight, for the whole fight, and not turned into a caricature for conspiracy theory lore. Because without Virginia, it is entirely possible that Epstein would still be free, entirely possible that this would still be happening, and we might not have known about any number of these pedophiles gracing the halls of power. So, speaking of pedophiles in the halls of power, let's start with the prince, Prinz Andrew. Virginia was smart enough and cunning enough to play the good victim, and she asked for a photograph with the prince. She said that she wanted something to show her mom from her travels, and her captors foolishly agreed and took it on her camera. This single photograph is probably one of the most significant pieces of forensic evidence in any case in recent history. This single photograph sent shockwaves around the world and stopped the British royal family in its tracks. It also spurred international media attention for the larger story and brought clear, tangible weight to the scope of Epstein's operations. Even the most common person can see this photo and understand that there is no explanation for the prince to have his hand around a 17-year-old girl in that way, in that setting, with that person in the background. From Virginia's bravery coming forward, more followed, and then more, until there were hundreds of victims. Depositions started piling up, media swarmed to the story, and names started coming out. Some were men who were clearly targets of the blackmail operation, like Prince Andrew was. But others seemed to straddle the line between the blackmailed and the blackmailers. Allegedly perverted men, perhaps, but perhaps also involved in the financial, logistical, or legal framework of this conspiracy that was hidden in plain sight in the highest halls of power. So in no particular order, here's just a handful of those men who are still available for questioning today, should Kash want to. Leon Black, the billionaire founder of Apollo Global Management, one of the most powerful asset managers in the world. He paid Epstein more than $180 million for tax advice and allegedly saved over $1.3 billion by using those tax avoidance strategies. He was also accused of sexual assault in connection with Jeffrey Epstein by multiple victims, one of whom was a teenager with Down syndrome and autism. Leon Black denied the allegations, and eventually all the charges were settled or dropped. He resigned from most of his cushy positions, but he's still out there doing his thing, being a happy little billionaire. Larry Summers, who played an instrumental role in the deregulation that led directly to the 2008 collapse, met with Jeffrey Epstein more than a dozen times from 2013 through 2016, after Jeffrey Epstein had already done time for soliciting prostitution from a minor and after Harvard had stopped receiving his donations. Maybe they were just buddies. Anyways, Larry Summers recently did a stint on the board of directors of OpenAI. He still teaches at the Harvard Kennedy School and lectures us about the economy, which he helped destroy over the last 70 years. He is very wealthy, doing quite well, available for questioning, should Kash want to. Alan Dershowitz was one of Epstein's lawyers for the original 2008 case and also allegedly a massage enthusiast. He said some pretty interesting things about it all in the past.
Did you ever see Mr. Epstein with underage girls?
No. Oh, no. If I had ever seen Jeffrey Epstein in any inappropriate situation with an underage girl, I would have terminated my relationship and turned him in. No way.
So you're obviously surprised by the allegations.
We were shocked by the allegations, but as a criminal lawyer, being shocked by an allegation doesn't mean that I won't defend somebody.
Alan Dershowitz helped negotiate what many have criticized as a lenient plea deal for Jeffrey Epstein in 2008. Dershowitz denies the deal was a bargain, instead arguing prosecutors lacked the evidence to indict Epstein for federal sex trafficking charges.
He was shocked. But multiple housekeepers and victims testified to Dershowitz's involvement in all this evil stuff going on behind the scenes, but he denies ever doing anything untoward, so obviously he must be innocent. You could tell there's nothing shady going on there, because he has called on Trump multiple times to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, claiming that she is entirely innocent and the whole story is lies. So, yeah. I'm sure that old Dershie would be available to answer some questions too, Kash. Just saying. Then there's Ehud Barak, the literal former prime minister of Israel and ex-head of Israeli military intelligence, who coincidentally just happened to visit Epstein at least 30 times that we know of between 2013 and 2017. Unlike many of Epstein's other visitors, Ehud actually had the good sense to try to hide his face while sneaking in and out of Epstein's residence, which he did monthly for 11 consecutive months starting in December of 2015, which is just really interesting. I can't imagine why the former head of Israeli military intelligence would have a regular meeting schedule with this guy that just seemed to be blackmailing American politicians and elites on behalf of some unknown foreign government. Oh, right. Anyways, Ehud is a little busy with a different spying program going tits up over in Italy right now, but I'm sure he could possibly, just maybe, make some time in his busy schedule to talk about this one. And of course, we have to talk about Leslie Wexner, the bankroll. Of all the rich guys who are still walking free after this scandal, Leslie Wexner is in many ways the most outrageous. Wexner is the founder and former chairman of The Limited, or L Brands, which encompasses Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie & Fitch, and Hollister, among many others. I just point out those three, though, because they were all fronts for sex trafficking rings. And Leslie Wexner, though he feebly claimed that Epstein stole from him and he had no idea what his boy Jeffrey was up to, he was both the bankroll and the access that Epstein used to prey on teen girls. Whitney Webb reported in One Nation Under Blackmail that Wexner signed his complete power of attorney over to Epstein, meaning that Epstein had complete control over all of Wexner's financial and business assets. He could buy, sell, and manage anything Wexner owned on Wexner's behalf without Wexner present. This gave Wexner the cover to say that he had no idea what Epstein was up to. But let's be real, Les. Let's be real. You didn't become one of the wealthiest Jewish and pro-Israel philanthropists in the world by not knowing what you were doing. You did so by allying with your buddies at the mega group and financing sexual blackmail and intelligence operations around the world while simultaneously selling unattainable beauty standards to young girls. Allegedly. Leslie Wexner is a real piece of work. Whitney has a whole chapter in her book about that one time when he admitted that he believes that he is possessed by an evil demon named a Dybbuk that drives him to always thirst for more power and more money. Yeah, he obviously had no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was up to while he flew all around the world, posing as a Victoria's Secret recruiter, using Victoria's Secret bank accounts for multi-million-dollar properties and jets and the like. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot that his other modeling and fashion company, Abercrombie & Fitch, was also running a sex trafficking ring, which was super gay. News broke last year that Mike Jeffries, the Abercrombie CEO, had been using the Abercrombie modeling catalog as his personal menu. And there were some truly messed up details in the court documents, like victims being locked in rooms during group sex acts, injected with drugs, and more. Those allegations never made it far enough to uncover any true extent of whether the trafficking was being exported as a service to any other powerful men around the world the way that Epstein was doing with Victoria's Secret, because the court ruled this year that he was unfit to stand trial due to dementia and Alzheimer's. So, oh well that he trafficked and raped all those young boys, I guess. Just case closed. Oh, allegedly, by the way, allegedly. Never got tried in a court. We have no idea. You can read the documents for yourself. And I mentioned old Mike because he was specifically put in place by Leslie Wexner, who bought Abercrombie in 1988, and then within just a couple years, put Jeffries in to rebuild the brand with a particular focus on the teen customer. I'm sure Leslie didn't mean it quite like that, though. No way. Surely he had no idea. He just happened to keep hiring pedophiles to run his businesses and manage all of his money. Just such bad luck for Mr. Wexner. Really unbelievable. But anyways, I guess that Mr. Jeffries is not available for Kash to ask any questions, as he is apparently now a vegetable, an old, perverted, gay vegetable. But now I want to shift gears a little bit from the billionaires who seem to be in some way involved in the trafficking organization to some of the prominent targets who are still available for questioning. Just a small smattering that we know of today to give our boy Kash a head start. Like David Copperfield, he can be found on the Las Vegas Strip still today in 2025. I was appalled to discover when I recently went to the Bitcoin conference there that bro is still doing magic shows in 2025. But anyways, Copperfield was one of those left field names that came up in Joanna Schoberg's depositions, sort of like when everyone was scratching their heads over mention of Stephen Hawking. He allegedly met with Epstein multiple times, and police recovered dozens of handwritten messages from him in Epstein's home. Joanna Schoberg alleged that she met him at a dinner at Epstein's house one time, and he asked her if she was aware, quote, that girls were getting paid to find other girls, which in isolation almost sounds like he was concerned and snooping into the matter to see if he should do anything about it. Copperfield later used this exact story and that same logic when news of his connections to Epstein came out. And in some ways, it's understandable. Schoberg was 20 at the time and sort of shrugged the question off, so it kind of tracks. Until you search for David Copperfield sexual assault on Google, and oh boy, either there are a lot of gold diggers trying to Me Too this dude, or he was friends with Epstein for a reason. There are lots of allegations that he denies, and honestly, they might all be untrue or women juiced up on the Me Too frenzy turning drunk hookups into accusations. I don't know. But I do know that Copperfield openly admits to befriending a 15-year-old fan when she came to one of his shows, then maintaining a friendship with her, sending her gifts and tickets, but not grooming her, definitely not grooming her. And then, as soon as she turned 18, he started banging her and spent the next 4 years doing so. So that's super awkward, dude. Maybe all those other accusations are more than just accusations, maybe. Anyways, Kash, you could find this dude any old night down on the Las Vegas Strip. His face is like 60 feet tall, all over the place down there. You really can't miss him. Obviously, there's also Bill Clinton, who, when he's not pardoning his coke trafficking brother or getting his cigar trimmed by Monica Lewinsky, he apparently, according to Schoberg, likes them young, a quote that is now infamous. Jeffrey Epstein visited the Clinton White House a whopping 17 times, often with various beautiful women on his arms. And I would say that Kash should speak to whoever the hell let him in there, except that he can't, because his name is Mark Middleton, and he conveniently committed suicide a couple years ago by shooting himself in the chest with a shotgun that was not found at the crime scene, while simultaneously strangling himself with an electrical cord, all while tied to a tree. True story. But other influential politicians Kash might want to investigate include George Mitchell, the former Democratic Senate Majority Leader who Giuffre allegedly said that she was trafficked to for sex, as well as former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. And Bill Richardson is a key piece of this puzzle because Epstein chose to put his ranch in New Mexico. And there was a fair bit of legal red tape that he had to wade through in order to acquire the land and to put an airstrip on it without any inspections and any hassle and such. And I'm not the only one who suspects Bill Richardson was scratching Epstein's back while Epstein's girls were scratched, well, allegedly. And by the way, Zorro Ranch is still out there. I drove right up to its gates just a couple months ago and snooped around. I bet Kash could cook up a reason why he might need to go dig up the basement out there or something like that. Or at least just investigate who the hell bought it and why, because I think we all know that whoever bought it has a little bit of explaining to do. And lastly, for today, we come to Glenn and Eva Dubin. These two touch on a whole other side of Epstein's business, which was matchmaking. Glenn Dubin was allegedly the first man Epstein trafficked Virginia Giuffre to when she was 16. And Eva Anderson Dubin is Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend of 10 years. And 10 years is a number that doesn't even begin to make sense when you're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend. But anyways, Glenn Dubin is a billionaire hedge fund manager, the founder of Highbridge Capital. Shortly after Epstein introduced Glenn to Jess Staley, who was a senior executive at JP Morgan, Glenn Dubin sold Highbridge to JP Morgan over the course of several years for several $1 billion. He remained on as the CEO. So it was a very profitable relationship before the exchange of the supermodel girlfriend, a girlfriend who was apparently, allegedly, down with Glenn's other proclivities as well. Because the Dubin's personal chef, Deborah Rizzo, and her husband, Ronaldo Rizzo, testified in their depositions that in late 2004 or early 2005, Eva brought a young girl over to the house and told her to sit and wait in the kitchen. Rizzo could tell that the girl was upset and was shaking, and when they were briefly alone with her, she started to detail how she is being forced to do sexual acts for Jeffrey Epstein, but then when they hear Eva returning, she goes mute, and Eva comes in and says that she will be working for her in the city. Other reporting picked up on an important detail from the deposition that the girl's passport had allegedly been taken from her, trapping her with the captors, allegedly. That comes up with multiple different girls in multiple different parts of this whole story. Mr. Rizzo also allegedly watched Ghislaine Maxwell doing some messed up stuff with a bunch of underage girls at some point. I'm sure that Kash could go and talk to the Rizzos. They were clearly decent people, not down with what's going on. But Glenn and Eva Dubin were all good with it, allegedly involved in it. And they invited Epstein over for Thanksgiving dinner the year after he finished his 2009 prison sentence and sweetheart deal for soliciting sex from a minor. Eva also advocated for Epstein to his probation officer, saying that she, quote, felt 100% comfortable with Jeffrey Epstein around my children, which is not saying much once you learn of all of these allegations that she's involved in. The Dubins were also extremely close with Leslie Wexner, or they were owed a big favor by him as they were two of the only people ever allowed to use his yacht without him present. His crew actually ventured to ask what Mr. Dubin did for work as they were so shocked to be setting sail without Wexner aboard. So I'm sure that Kash could track this lovely couple down and ask them a few questions if he felt inspired to. Something tells me that they know more than just about how Epstein managed his taxes for billionaires. But we could go on and on about all the rich and powerful men that are praying the files never come out. I didn't even mention Bill Gates or Sergey Brin or Elon Musk or Donald Trump, who are all implicated to varying degrees by relationships to Epstein. And again, we don't really know how guilty most of these people are. There are a lot of allegations and loose connections to be drawn, but theoretically, Kash Patel is the literal dude who is supposed to be out searching for those answers for us so that assholes like me don't need to be speculating on the internet. But seeing as it is perhaps one of the most pressing issues of national security and is likely still compromising many of our highest ranking government and corporate officials to this day, someone's got to do it. And Kash seems to think that his job is to just read the official cover-up to us. We'll get to the most obvious place that Kash could start investigating next. All right, so we've talked about a lot of the Johns, but perhaps a far more concrete place to start digging is a set of people that would be far more knowledgeable and far more vulnerable to questioning by the FBI, and that is the women who helped Epstein perpetrate the crimes. Because the sick truth of the story is that without the women that acted as Epstein's pimps and groomers, this whole operation would never have been possible. You already all know about Ghislaine Maxwell, so we'll skip over her for today and get to the two other women whose names you might not have heard. And at the top of that list is Sarah Kellen, who was Ghislaine's right-hand woman, and by some accounts, more responsible for the operations day-to-day than even Maxwell. Sarah Kellen was almost certainly a victim first, who was then groomed into a position of greater and greater responsibility for recruiting, scheduling, and managing Epstein's victims. She knew what was happening, where it was happening, when it was happening, and who was involved. She kept records, made phone calls, organized meetings, pickups, drop-offs, and much more. She, without a doubt, certainly knows enough to blow the whole case wide open. Allegedly. Allegedly. Today, she's a multimillionaire, married to NASCAR driver Brian Vickers. She's just out there living life like a normal rich person in New York. Except when she's staying in her $6 million penthouse in Miami, of course. This is where everything gets really infuriating and insane. This isn't some unproven accusation. We know for a fact that she worked for Epstein in this sort of capacity, and the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years for her role in the operation sets clear judicial precedent for prosecuting the other women that filled similar roles. The fact that Kash probably doesn't even know about this is criminal and frankly kind of embarrassing. There's absolutely no reason why this woman should be walking free, living the high life like nothing ever happened, while Epstein's victims are living with a lifetime of trauma and suffering. She's easy to find. She's married to a NASCAR driver. And actually, just the other day, my girlfriend pulled up an article while we were in the grocery store, and it turns out that our boy Brian Vickers is over it. He's done being married to Epstein's literal assistant, and he's filing for divorce and ending his social media blackout. Good move, bro. Good move. Great time to talk to Sarah, Kash. Just saying. Then there's Leslie Groff, who was Epstein's personal assistant for almost 20 years. She was named in the 2008 plea deal as a possible co-conspirator. She also arranged travel and lodging and scheduled for the endless stream of underage girls being raped by Epstein. She also would be able to blow the whole thing wide open. She would know all about who was getting massages, who was giving them, what the inner workings of the organization were, and she's also walking around free to this day. There are others, but you get the point. There are answers out there, and they are still alive, walking around with everything you might need to break this case wide open, if you did your job and investigated it instead of mindlessly participating in the cover-up. You are the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Your job is to solve crimes, not declassify fake documents left to you by your corrupt predecessors. Because the most important thing to remember in all this, the elephant in the room, is that Epstein worked for one or multiple intelligence agencies. He was a spy. He was not just some random pedophile. This is a matter of national security, and all the blackmail that he collected much of the fruits of his operations are still in play. And I'm still waiting for a convincing argument that his primary employer was someone other than Israeli military intelligence. Whitney Webb clearly lays out all the evidence and sourcing you need to understand this hypothesis in her 2-part book, One Nation Under Blackmail. But even if he wasn't working for Israel, let's just imagine that this organization made up of a bunch of Jewish billionaires was working for Iran or China or even for the CIA and not for Israel. Then it is still a matter of national security, urgent national security. Having one leak, one mole in our government is a matter of urgent national security. But we are talking about a whole network, vast enough and powerful enough to hand Kash an empty box of official FBI files that show nothing, despite the fact that we know the FBI confiscated blackmail tapes from his mansion that contained recordings of many of these powerful people engaging in sexual acts with minors. We know that Epstein kept trophies like a large painting of Bill Clinton wearing a blue dress. We know that he was close friends in some form with the former prime minister of Israel and the former head of Israeli military intelligence. We know that he was friends with just about everyone else in his day, from the heads of the world's biggest tech companies and banks to many of the biggest names in Hollywood to former and also current presidents of the United States. So naturally, no one is all too happy with Kash right now. Personally, I'm inclined to believe he's telling us his own truth, the truth of what he's seeing and finding. I just know that if he is unaware of the reporting of broken surveillance cameras outside Epstein's cell and of the other autopsies, then how much else in this story is he unaware of? Because the answers aren't going to come from the leftovers of the Biden administration. They're going to come from someone powerful with the authority to pursue it, digging into the hundreds of open leads left scattered across America and around the world. I have left a few dozen open threads here in this episode. For more, read Whitney Webb's One Nation Under Blackmail or follow any of the incredible independent journalists that have been digging into this for more than a decade now. As to the question we all started at, and the hill that Kash seems intent on dying on, did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself? I don't know. Many people aren't aware that Epstein filed a new will in the Virgin Islands just days before he allegedly killed himself, which means something. I'm not really sure what, but it means something. I think there is a possibility that he killed himself, but honestly, if you're going to parrot wild conspiracy theories like Jeffrey Epstein managed to break his own neck by hanging himself from a bedsheet in his cell while shorting out the cameras and putting the guards to sleep outside as well, then you might as well take a stop by Epstein isn't dead conspiracy theories while you're out there in Crazy Town. Because whether you like it or not, it's kind of weird that dead Epstein's nose looked to be hooked while alive Epstein's was straight, and dead Epstein's ears seem to have a distinctly different cartilage pattern than alive Epstein. In fact, this actually gets to the only positive version of what's going on right now, which is a theory that's been floating for some time, and it was revoiced by Chase Geiser of InfoWars just the other day, that Epstein might be in witness protection, which at first sounds like a crazy conspiracy theory. What, are you telling me that they faked his death and rolled out a dead body double or a fake autopsy and all this crazy stuff just to protect Jeffrey Epstein? And actually, it's not as crazy as you might think. In fact, if you were serious about prosecuting the Epstein network, you would need to take him off the playing field long enough to build your case, lest he actually get murdered by the faction you're trying to prosecute, just like everyone currently believes happened. Intelligence agencies and organized crime, and even just regular old celebrities, have been using body doubles for years. The CIA has had skin masks that are nearly impossible to spot since at least the 90s, when the CIA's head of disguise walked into the White House wearing one and briefed the president on the technology without him or the Secret Service knowing that she was in disguise until she took it off. There's a whole TED Talk about that. You can watch it. I've made videos about it. It's crazy. But the main reason why everyone on the right is so appalled with Kash and Dan right now is because they were legitimate straight shooters before entering the administration. Dan certainly slanted well to the right, but both of them had a proven track record of calling out corruption and calling for action on the Epstein files. Their 180 as soon as they entered office is really weird, and there's no convincing way to explain their change of tune other than some vast and extremely powerful blackmail operation threatening their lives or their families, or maybe some version of this witness protection theory. Plus, remember this super weird video that we got from Megyn Kelly in January of 2024?
We're not done with Jeffrey Epstein. I can tell you that for a fact. Can't tell you how I know, but I can tell you for a fact we're going to hear a lot more about Jeffrey Epstein in the coming year. And you may be even hearing from him directly. More on that as I'm allowed to tell you.
Well, I still don't know what to make of that one at all. If she's alluding to this whole witness protection theory, then she really jumped the gun on that report. But who knows? It would be hard to keep everyone from hearing rumors of such an operation if that was what was really going on. There might be whispers and leaks to well-connected journalists like Meghan. So, actually, if you want a white-pilled conspiracy theory, then chew on that one for a bit. However, the key phrase in everything that we just said was if you were serious about prosecuting the Jeffrey Epstein network. And that's a pretty big if. But either way, we will likely get answers on that in the next year or 4. I mean, the funny part is, and the part that Kash of all people should be familiar with from Russiagate, is that at a certain point, the mainstream story becomes so improbable that the accumulation of evidence so absolute that it is actually the conspiracy theory. Because, yeah, maybe Epstein was just a random pedophile that Bill Barr's dad hired for a teaching job he had no qualifications for. Then he fooled a few dozen of the world's richest, smartest, and most cutthroat business people into letting him manage their money when he had no resume at all. And then he didn't manage their money at all, but proceeded to build himself a sex trafficking empire, complete with boats and planes and mansions and an island. And then he walked that empire straight into the White House 17 times. And he also flew around the world with the Prince of England and also just got lucky with his sweetheart deal. And Alex Acosta just misheard that whole intelligence thing and he never corrected the record. And he was just friends with Ehud Barak because they liked to play dreidel together once a month in his mansion as underage girls flowed in and out of it. But Ehud didn't notice any of that, and neither did any of the other billionaires that still walk around free to this day, including several currently running our government and orchestrating massive pandemic responses. And eventually, Jeffrey's good luck just ran out, and he went down like any old common criminal would. But if you ask me, you'd have to be a crazy conspiracy theorist to believe something that ridiculous. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for sticking through. Thanks for clicking like on the video. Be sure to subscribe to Candace's channel and follow the link in the description to go over to my channel, Ian Carroll Show, and subscribe there as well. Drink some water. Tell someone you love them tonight. Get some sleep. And we'll see you tomorrow.